Thank you everyone for coming out. Thank you especially to all of our panelists today. Just by way of introduction, my name is Jake Clayson. I'm with DAKTIC. We're your local sole source for a variety of manufacturers, including Consulab, Fluid Power Training Institute, Switch. I'm just a stupid salesman, so you won't be hearing any technical brilliance from me. That's why I surround myself with people like these guys here on the panel. Just real quick, so I get a little read of the audience here, can I get a raise of hands on who's a first-time attendee for the RMATS conference today? Wow, fantastic. I'm going to go through the panelists here just one by one, starting alphabetically by manufacturer. So I'm not picking any favorites here. We'll start with the guys from Autel. If you guys can give me just a quick 10 seconds on who you are, what your responsibility is at your respective companies, that'd be great.
How you doing? I'm John Foro. I am an Autel instructor. I do technical training as well as sales training for all of our product line.
Thanks, John. Next, we got Antonio from BMW. Could you give us, Antonio, could you give me just 10 seconds of what you do at BMW?
Give me 1 second. Sorry, I was messing with the buttons. Good morning, everybody. My name is Antonio Maldonado. So I work with BMW in recruitment. We recruit students for our STEP program. So any student that's coming out of a post-secondary education school, we put them through a 6-month paid program to basically become a BMW technician.
You guys hear that okay? Okay. Next week, thank you, Antonio. Next, we got Scott Brown from Diagnostic Network. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Good morning. Good morning, Scott Brown. Diagnostic Network is an online community for service professionals in the transportation space. I also am a 38-year veteran of the service industry, and I own a 62-year-old independent service center just outside of Los Angeles. And I'm heavily engaged in educating students, bringing apprentices through my business, and helping the industry get equipped for the next generation of automobiles.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. Okay, Blair, you want to jump in?
You bet. My name is Blair Newbold. I work for Rivian. My role right now is Senior Field Service Engineer, supporting factory end-of-line technicians here at the factory in Normal, Illinois. Before this job here, I was 7 years as an automotive educator at Weber State in Ogden. And then I was a technician 12 years before that, so ASE Master Tech. So
awesome, thank you, Blair. Next, we've got Chuck from Snap-on.
Good morning and happy Friday. My name is Chuck Searles. I am National Training Manager for Snap-on Equipment. 30 years in the biz, and I am a recovering automotive technician.
John Shoebridge here. I'm the collision undercar training specialist here at Snap-on, formerly with Hunter and actually Volkswagen, Audi, Bentley, Bugatti, Lamborghini, and currently, I'm heavily engaged with collision repair and still have my hand dabble in ADAS and of course all the undercarriage, meaning wheels, tires, service, brakes, and alignment.
Excellent. Thank you, John. Appreciate you coming back again here for another round of punishment with us. John and several of these other gentlemen were on the Western Wheels virtual conference we did during the pandemic and shared their expertise in a similar panel discussion. Okay. Mike from Tesla.
There you go. Had to find the unmute button. Hey, my name is Mike McConnell. I'm with Tesla. Been in the industry just about 30 years or so. I've taught automotive classes for probably 25 plus years of them with Toyota, also with Ivy Tech Community College in Lafayette, Indiana, and 12 plus years with Tesla. So been there, done that, worked on many different fuel systems, and yeah, so I'm here to answer some questions today.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Mike. Mike is also a returning guy for us. All right, so hopefully we get some of the other gentlemen join us here in a little bit, but for now, you guys are more than enough. We've got a series of questions here that we have not enough time for. Thanks to everybody who did contribute questions and also voted on the questions that we had proposed. We've got the number one discussion point here is about how to future-proof your programs. So what are the most future-proof skills students need to be ready for a rapidly changing industry? I'll just let anybody jump in wherever.
So I would say I've taught in my previous lifetime here, I've taught at both secondary and post-secondary education levels. And I would say, honestly, as a professional shop owner as well, if you teach them just basic life skills of showing up to work on time, ready to work, a lot of the technical information can be trained on the job. So that's a key point. Also, it's important to get the point across that they should never stop learning, because with the automotive industry constantly evolving, you can never just become complacent and saying, I know what I know and I don't need to learn any new type of technology here. And then probably, I think everybody would probably agree with this, one of the largest skills a student would need to possess would be a firm understanding of electricity. You know, that seasoned veterans don't really have a firm understanding of electricity from my experience. And most of computer controls and ADAS and EV and all that stuff all originates with the firm understanding of electricity.
Thank you, John. Mike?
I'll jump in if nobody else is going to jump in. So I would suggest that a lifelong skill set would be having a high analytical awareness, right, or analytical skill set. You know, I still diagnose cars and problems, and a lot of times, you know, service information kind of leaves you hanging, or it walks you through a procedure where you may not understand, why am I checking this, right? So a technician with that skill set, understanding how systems were built, or maybe how the engineer might be inferencing through some input to validate something. And if they can approach it that way, they can pretty much fix anything. I mean, not only cars, but, you know, other electronics. I think also having a strong math and physics skill set is also very important, especially as we move forward to, you know, more electrified platforms. And the other skill set, I think, is being able to understand communications. We've got various network communications, and sometimes these are very daunting to some technicians because they just can't read the matrix. I don't think any of us can, but if you have a deep understanding of how networks work and what some of the rules are, it's just going to help you with technology as it continues to evolve. Thank you.
Thank you. So our foundational.
I'll jump in there real quick too. So wholeheartedly agree with both John and Scott. One thing to really keep in mind is these days, knowledge isn't knowing the answer. It's knowing where to find it. So building on what was just discussed, having a strong understanding of how service information works is huge. Everybody does it a little bit different. If you're working for a manufacturer, an OE, it's pretty easy to learn, you know, down that lane. But if you're going to be independent, then you have to learn a variety of skills. So just keep in mind that you have to know how to use the service information tools that are at your disposal.
Excellent.
Yeah, and I would like to tag on to that. Reading comprehension, and what I mean what I mean by that is not only, we're not reading Dante's Inferno and trying to figure out the 7 different layers of hell and stuff like that, but sometimes when we're working on vehicles, we get into those multiple layers and we're trying to figure out, what are we reading? What is that tool telling us? What's that multimeter reading telling us? What's that wiring diagram telling us? What is that repair manual telling us? So reading comprehension is super, super important, and I can't stress that enough. Tesla, we're 100% electric. So, electrical basics and understanding what you're reading on those different scopes and meters and such, that is super, super important. So, yeah.
Thanks, Mike.
Mike, can I chime in on what you just said there about the reading comprehension? Most technicians don't want to read, they want to be told what to do. And today's learning, especially the last 2 years that COVID kind of ruined our education system. I can say that because I had children that went through the tail end of that mess, and they're lost at the collegiate level now, and they're having to back up and teach basic 10th, 11th grade, 12th grade skills at college. And I'm not paying for a high school education. I'm hoping that I'm paying for a secondary education, but that's not what my children are receiving now. But that gives us a challenge, and I kind of want to go right straight to bullet 10 in our first section. What should high school programs focus on compared to colleges and universities? Last week I participated in the ASE workshop for the collision repair education society, and this was a big one that we had to break down. And I think that would cut to the chase and utilize a lot of our time a little better if we kind of focus maybe a little there. Who should be doing what, and what should they be doing? I mean, at a high school level, what should they be teaching? Well, this is a Phillips screwdriver. This is a straight blade screwdriver. And then from there, basic skills such as inspection, fluids, how to change a tire is a great skill. Some would argue that they need to learn how to do diagnostics and things like that, running scan tools and all of that. And like you mentioned, basics of electronics and electricity, that is a very important skill. But are the high schoolers ready for it? I mean, my day in high school, a DVOM was a DVOM. How many different DVOMs do we have now? So it's where do we begin at high school? Where do we go from our post-secondary into secondary, and then OE, and then what I did for the last 20 years, end user training from a manufacturer's perspective to an OE. And everybody just needs to know their roles and where to begin. But the ones that are really lost and in the weeds seem to be the high school instructors. And we had several of them on our committee last week, and they're struggling with just about everything on this piece of paper from here on down to the resources. How do I get people interested? Is anybody really going to get interested? What are the OEs going to do for us? And it's really a mess at their level, especially since COVID.
Thank you, John. Any other thoughts on that split between high school and post-secondary? Where should
So
one?
I'll jump in real quick if I can. I agree 100% with everything that was just said there. And, when I taught at the high school level, you're dealing with a little level of immaturity, but you're also dealing with a lot of other issues that we don't really like to talk about in the industry. But, there's still a stigmatism placed on a student wanting to become an automotive repair technician, whether it be from their parents or whatever the case happens to be. And, I can't stress enough that at the high school level, pretty much the basics, an understanding of how a cooling system is supposed to work, an understanding of lubrication systems, internal combustion engines, a basic understanding of electricity. And, it's a little bit too premature for them coming into the program having no prior knowledge most times of anything. I mean, the industry's definitely changed. When I took high school automotives, as a kid, you were outside playing, you were taking apart mini bikes, building go-karts. You don't have that with today's kids. I mean, they've gone from playing whatever it happens to be, Xbox or Nintendo. I'm probably dating myself. There's probably something newer than all that. You've gone from, that to getting them involved with a very complex subject matter. So that's the basics is what I recommend should be taught at the high school level. And I agree 100%. It's funny that Scott said analytical thought process, because that was one of my answers for number 2. Start getting into understanding how something's supposed to work, because if you don't understand how it's supposed to work, you have virtually zero shot at ever being able to diagnose and repair it. And that thought process is something that has to constantly be taught, no matter if it's a post-secondary student, or even at the high school level. If the vehicle is overheating, we use cooling systems as an example. If it's overheating, why is it overheating? So, and that thought process has to continue to constantly be at the forefront of learning throughout your entire career, in my opinion.
So how would you define the basics of electricity versus the more advanced stuff that you do in college? How deep are we going into diagnostics at the K-12 level?
So whenever I teach a class, understanding that the subject matter may be brand new, and since we're talking about at a high school level, you have to get them engaged, and you have to use analogies. So since we're talking electricity, you can't virtually see electricity. So you have to use analogies, something that they can relate to. So, one thing I like to do, it's pretty basic, but when we're talking about batteries at that lower level type of introductory to electronics training class, I can sit down and I can talk about the cell construction and glass mat batteries and all that. But coming in, that's probably not going to generate a lot of interest, and they don't fully understand the chemical composition and stuff. So I take a nickel and a penny, and I pass a nickel and penny around to everybody in the room, and a voltmeter, and I tell them, stack the nickel and penny on top of each other and see if you have any kind of voltage. And nobody's going to have any voltage. So then we take a little piece of paper towel and we put some saliva on the piece of paper towel, and we sandwich that now saliva riddled paper towel in between the nickel and penny, and we measure voltage again. And now they're going to get a couple millivolts. And depending on how much acidic content's in their saliva, then that voltage will vary. So right away that sparks an interest, and it also helps with the stigmatism in a way, because now that student can go home. They're sitting at dinner with their parents or whatever the case happens to be. They're kind of proud that they learned that. And it's an analogy that you can build on, battery composition, whether it's a regular lead acid battery or, building that, branching it all the way off into the latest and greatest lithium style batteries or whatever. So I think that those are the big key things, to use analogies whenever possible when you're describing something that's a fairly new concept to somebody, and spark the interest in some way.
Thank you for that, John.
So can I chime in on going back to like the high school level? An important point, I think, and sparking that interest, what John just said. If I reflect back to when I was in high school, this is late 70s, and in fact, I don't think DVOM was even in my vernacular back then. But one unique thing happened that I can distinctly remember that probably triggered me to pursue this career. And my high school instructor, he was very in tune with the emerging technology back then. So I think all of you can understand what the emerging technology was back then, and that was emission controls. We're in California, and so he went into a thing about, hey, this is emerging stuff. This is new things these are new things that are being applied to an automobile to reduce emissions, and why. And that really stuck with me on going, wow, this is an opportunity for me to understand what this stuff is. And and so on. And then, it evolved into fuel injection and everything else. I think at the high school level, it might be a pretty tall order to ask for them to have some knowledge on electrification. But man, if these guys have some skill, or these folks teaching at the high school level can introduce a little bit of that, that will probably inspire some folks to say, hey, wow, I see an opportunity here. I want to learn more. I want to do what I can to better myself. And then, of course, they need to generate revenue for their family and so on. And I think that is probably a missing spark component that will help to prime the pipeline, so to speak. Does that make sense?
Does.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
So another thing too, since we're on the subject of basic electricity, I know I'm going to catch some haze for this, but Ohm's law typically doesn't fix a car. I'll shield myself now. It doesn't. Okay, but you can very quickly and easily build 12-volt circuits with a bit of wire, a bulb, a battery, maybe some switches. And after you've talked through electricity at DC, 12 volt, you can put them to work with a meter and actually go through and check available voltage, measure voltage drop, and they can actually see it work. Typically, your learners, if they're involved, are going to be kinesthetic, right? They need to learn with their hands, not so much with seeing. So if you can put them on a circuit, simple, you can build resistance into that circuit pretty simply. You can create opens, you can create shorts, and you can see what's going on. Get them involved, get their hands on the project.
Thank you for that. Just to shake things up a little bit, Mike Logan, thank you for joining. Mike is from Nikola. I was connected to him through a customer that we have in Northern California, Eric Rubio at Duncan Polytechnical High School, and they have, as far as I'm aware, the only all-EV long hauler in the country, and that's at a K-12 level. So we're dealing with a little bit more than nickels and pennies and saliva in that case. Not to discount those approaches, you got to start with the fundamentals there. But I'm interested to know, Mike, if you could tell us a little bit more about why you got involved with a K-12 program like that, what you're looking for, and why you're working there as opposed to at some of the colleges.
Yeah, it's just getting the jump on potential future technicians. Really, I mean, having a hand in helping guide, the program for students with future technology is pretty cool thing. I mean, I've taught for many years now. From high school graduates, I taught for UTI for 4 years. So I got to see what was coming out of high school that was interested in automotive technology. And my friendship with Eric Rubio there at Duncan Polytechnical, I get to, be exposed to a lot of it there as well. But even today, at Nikola, the technicians that we're hiring are missing so many things. They're missing so many just simple understanding of an electrical circuit. It really is surprising to me how some of the technicians that have even 10 years of experience are so inexperienced with a basic multimeter and a basic circuit and how to troubleshoot it.
Thanks for that, Mike. What do you hope will come? What skills do you hope they're going to come away with from that program, that K-12 program?
Actually, quite a bit. Understanding of electricity, how to troubleshoot it, understanding of battery technologies, and another lacking area of technicians I see today is computer skills. Understanding of how to use Excel, how to use Word, how to use all of the Microsoft products, and how to organize and store information on their own computer, that they can recall to for when they're troubleshooting trucks and finding the information that they need. We have a big gap in that area where I'm at now. Technicians who come in and they know how to send an email and they know how to power up a computer and they may know how to connect to a truck, but when it comes to searching, finding, and using information, it's really big hole there.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. These are some pretty tall orders for a K-12 program. But I think having traveled all over the country and visited a lot of K-12 programs, there are some that are getting a lot of these outcomes with their students. Antonio, I know you also work quite a bit with K-12. Could you chime in a little bit on that topic?
I mean, it's a little bit different for us for my recruitment efforts. I mean, I look for students that have great hand skills. During the interview process, I make sure that they know what they're doing, what they're looking for, because for our program, it's very hands-on. So we changed our curriculum for the BMW STEP program. We made it to where now it's more of a dealership type of training. We noticed that with our old curriculum, it was going basically through like another school type of environment, and the students wouldn't come out as proficient as we wanted them to. So now we made it to where the students actually are employed and work with other technicians as if they were at the dealership to help them get those hand skills up. And when they arrive to the dealership culture is not so shocking to them. We noticed that a lot of students, when they would leave our old program and they would get to a dealership and the environment, they would get a little bit, they would get a little bit scared, and they were hesitant to work with a lot of newer technicians and older technicians. So we're trying to avoid that by doing this new curriculum that we just started last year. So hand skills is a big thing for us.
Very cool. So that ties in a lot with with just teaching general professionalism, it sounds like. Blair, did you have anything you wanted to add on this topic?
I just think this is such an exciting time to be in the industry. And if we can get the younger generation excited, you'll be able to just show them, hey, if you like software, the automotive industry is for you. Hey, if you like low voltage electrical or high voltage electrical, the automotive industry is for you. If you like networking or hardware, the automotive industry is for you. Like, it is so exciting. And I think, just our attitudes towards the industry, like, honestly, some of the smartest people I know to date are in the automotive industry. They are smart. And I think it's partly getting the parents involved too. Bring them down to the shop, show them the new, or show them some of the new projects that are going on, or get involved with, some of the other, regional clubs, or, little kids love cars and they love going to car shows, but like with the Tesla and the Rivian and the electric scene, there's car shows for that too. So you go to the meet and greets, show them how everything, and get the parents involved and show them that, hey, you know what? You can make $100,000 easy in this industry. You can be, anything you want to be. And it's all automotive related. And so, just getting them excited about that and showing them, if the instructors network with people who have like new latest and greatest cars or technology, or, work with, your Snap-on partners, or, just any contacts that you have that can get the kids excited. Because I'm here to tell you, like, this is like the most exciting and the most change we've seen in the industry in a long time. And so if we just get them excited, there's so many different ways they can go in automotive. And, they're like the greasy backyard mechanic, like, no, it's like, electrical engineering type people are just fixing cars, working on cars, solving problems. Like, there's a whole lot of people working together to make the industry even better than what it is. And so I don't know, I'm excited about it. I think there's a lot of room to move, a lot of room to grow. And like, it's just really, if you start with the basics, spend a lot of time with the DVOM. Just say, and then show them a high voltage circuit and just say, hey, even though it's high voltage, you still have to deal with, power and ground, and, loss of isolation. It's, you know, it's really, once they understand the fundamentals, it just kind of like blossoms. So anyway, that's all I got to say on this topic.
Awesome. Thank you, Blair.
One more thing, if I could just chime in to reinforce a little bit about what Blair was just talking about, and also back what Chuck was talking about. You know, electrical, I remember when I was being introduced to it, and it was, the fact is you can't see it, right? But you can visualize it. You can build little tools like Chuck was talking about, but man, get a multi-trace scope out and showing voltage over amperage with a current probe, and oh my God, their eyes will just blossom. And to add on that, this is the new technology, you know, all this ADAS stuff, there's a lot of mystery there, right? You don't get to really see what the heck's going on there. You try to calibrate, but then you hit a button and you hope that something's actually working. What I've done is gone out and tried to develop, or actually acquired some stuff to reinforce the computer vision and show them what computer vision is. I mean, this is a technology that's been around since the optical character recognition, right? And that's where a lot of this was born. And if we can illustrate that, and if you're going to, say, a job fair, or maybe bringing in students to see this stuff, if they start to see that, that's just going to open their eyes and blossom them too. And so not only for that, but also educating the technicians so that they can have a deeper understanding of what's going on behind the scenes and have a deeper appreciation for what it is they're tasked with doing when carrying out calibration operations on a vehicle. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Scott. Lots of good points there. One of the things that's coming up again and again, of course, is not surprising. We need to go deeper earlier with electrical, and we need to keep going further than we typically have been going in these programs, in addition to all the other things that we've got on the plate and all the new technologies. So let's see if we can give members of the audience here a little bit of breathing room. How can they make room to go deeper in these programs? What should they teach less of? What is not future-proof? Or what should they eliminate altogether from their programs?
I like to chime in here. You know, back when I was starting automotive classes teaching, you know, fuel injection was getting started, and, you know, the concept of teaching a carburetor in class was very frowned upon. But I had an excellent instructor that taught me about fuel injection. He was a big professor at Purdue University and everything. And the first day of class, for fuel systems, he had a carburetor. He went completely through the carburetor, talked about every single part, what it does. And then the next day of class, he said, okay, remember that carburetor? Now we're going to talk about fuel injection. This is how every single mechanical part relates to the fuel injection system. And it's, you know, starting with those basics, and there's a lot of people out there that'll say, we don't need to teach that old stuff anymore. But there's a lot to learn about how that stuff works. You know, you don't have to spend a whole week on it or whatever. You can spend a small amount of time. And if you teach it right, those are building blocks that lead to that next level. So when you talk about fuel injection, then that fuel injection begins to make sense. It's like, hey, this sensor is doing what this circuit did on the carburetor, and then here and here. And then now, you know, going to electric drivetrains and stuff, you know, I've been through all of that, and also on industrial equipment with propane and compressed natural gas systems as well. And so now it's like, you know, yeah, I know all those building blocks and stuff, and I look at an electric motor, I'm like, that's a piece of cake. It's easy peasy and everything. So you still need all those little fundamentals. Do we have to spend a super long amount of time on those fundamentals? Not necessarily, if you teach it correctly. And those fundamentals are going to lead to everything that's coming out in new technology as we move through the century and stuff. So yeah, start with those building blocks and build onto those.
Awesome. So Tesla wants you to study carburetors in your classes, it sounds like.
Hey, I love my old muscle cars. You know, there's nothing better than cold morning start and listen. And I love the smell of fossil fuels in the morning. It's like, yeah, Tesla is my carbon offset.
Excellent. I think that should be exciting for a lot of people in the program here, or in the programs here, because that's, of course, one of the things that still excites a lot of students. I still see a lot of hot rod type project vehicles going on in these different programs. The danger, of course, is you can stick too much with the past, but what I'm hearing from you, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, is that you don't teach them for their own sake, but you teach them as a gateway into the other technologies, the more current technologies.
Exactly, yeah. You could use some of that old technology as a gateway drug of sorts to getting into the automotive industry and absolutely falling in love with it. So the whole industry, I mean, just like Blair's talking about, it's just exploding. There's so many directions you can go to, and having just that building block in the beginning, that's going to get you to wherever you want to go later on in this industry.
Thanks for that, Mike. Other Mike from the other EV company, Nikola, it looks like you agreed right there with a couple exclamation marks. Anything you want to add to that?
Not much. He hit the nail on the head. I mean, if you can understand, it's understanding the fundamentals. If you can understand the fundamentals of how something works in and out, you can translate that into many, many other things.
Great, thank you. So, anybody else want to weigh in on that? Because so far it sounds like we've said you can't stop teaching carburetors, so you can't clear that out of your. You may teach it less, but what could we actually cross off from our list? What technologies are useless in the classroom from a pedagogical standpoint, if any?
This kind of came up last week when we did the collision thing in Alexandria, Virginia. I'm sorry, Dulles, Virginia. The gateway, as you had labeled it, it's cool to see a lot of these older cars in high schools to get kids attracted to it. I recently went to one of the state-of-the-art collegiate facilities in North Carolina that was built and contributed, donated by a local dealer who is a very large dealership organization in the Carolina region. And I saw state-of-the-art paint booths. I saw state-of-the-art frame equipment. I saw state-of-the-art alignment equipment and hand tools and everything state-of-the-art. And then there's a 1932 Chevy pickup truck sitting beside a 1968 Corvette. And I'm kind of scratching my head going, what are these post-secondary students learning on restoration when we need collision techs? And I kind of see the same thing happening in some of the automotive programs. We'll walk in and we're hoping that they're getting ready to learn EV technology, and somebody's Harley Davidson sitting there in 100 pieces. So I think getting a focus and getting an understanding of, hey, let's leave the gateway for the high school. I mean, there's challenges of getting them from high school to post-secondary, but that should be in maybe a change in recruiting and what we tell the kids at the high school level that they're going to be entering in post-secondary, and just getting prepared for that. And again, just sticking to the basics and not restoration, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, I think so. And in some cases, it seems like the restoration projects are often passion projects for the instructor and a way of getting a project car finished with some cheap labor. So that sounds a little bit like what you might be running into in some of those cases.
Could I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Do they have any information I'm a high school teacher, and I get forced into situations where it tends to be more quantity over quality instruction. Do they have any advice for that?
So correct me if I'm wrong, but the question is quantity over quality. When you're in the classroom, a lot of times you're being pushed towards covering a large quantity of topics as opposed to a large quantity of students. I see. So the priority of the school in a lot of cases is more butts and seats as opposed to better qualified graduates, correct? Okay, so we want to know how are we able to navigate that successfully. That obviously gets into situations with administration that may be foreign to at least some of the instructors here, but some of you guys, panelists, but Does anybody want to weigh into that? I know some of you have had to navigate
Yeah.
some of these issues.
Yeah, I like to chime in on that. I had a former boss who's no longer with the company. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. But anyways, he forced upon us instructors to double and triple the size of our individuals within our classes. And there was an incident in one of my classes that I was teaching. Luckily, I was trained in first aid and stuff through the Marine Corps and also through the Red Cross and all that stuff, so I could handle the situation. But yeah, that individual, because of the large quantity of people in the room, basically had some anxiety issues and such. And yeah, and having for administrators to constantly want large quantities of students in the classrooms in these kind of classes with a lot of hands-on stuff and a lot of my background is industrial arts classes and such, so what I used to teach back in the old days and everything. And yeah, you got a lot of spinning machines going around and everything, and the more people you get in there, the more of an environment that becomes very restrictive and very challenging for the instructor itself. So quantity over quality, yeah, the quality of the class will suffer because of the quantity of individuals that are in there. There has to be a limit. And for those administrators that don't understand that, they need to get in the classroom. They need to be the ones up in front teaching that class. Because I always tell people, if you can't do my job, please don't tell me how to do my job, because I'm doing the best that I can and you're not giving me the resources to do better. So, why don't you come to my classroom and let's spend some time and go through this. And I'm going to show you some of the challenges and risks and the potential risks to students, not only the instructor, by having those large quantity of individuals. So, in this incident that I was talking about earlier, this was here in the corporate world and the OEM teaching world, and that wasn't in a high school environment or anything. So, but stuff does happen, and we got to be prepared for that. And when you've got 28 students in your classroom, and you have a student go down with a seizure or something like that, it makes everything get real exciting really fast, and you need to be in control of the situation, and it becomes very difficult to always be in control when you do have such large quantities in there. So quality of instruction over quantity of students is always my priority. And if we got to add additional classes to the curriculum because we got so many students, hey, that's awesome. That's a good thing, but let's not try to shove 28, 30 people into one class when it should be about half of that.
That makes a lot of sense. So I think that speaks to administrator concerns, obviously, if you're able to push back diplomatically with safety concerns, because that's only going to go up when you get into high voltage systems, obviously. And we've seen no shortage of injuries historically in these classes. And that's the last thing that an instructor wants in the paper or anything like that. I got another question from the audience here, a couple of them.
Is he speaking? Yeah, he's just, I can't.
One of my biggest issues is getting into vehicles.
Okay.
Like, how many high schools
They're-
have anything to do?
Let's change.
Cars are 2004. I'm not teaching CAN bus, I'm not teaching anything new technology. I mean, it was almost when I was in high school that this car was made. So what I'm looking at is like, everybody wants us to work on newer vehicles, but nobody's willing to donate those vehicles to us so that we have the technology to integrate into our programs to get students to the next level.
Awesome, thank you for that. So to try and distill that a little bit for the panelists, what it sounds like is educators are being pushed to work on the most current technology, and yet one of the problems that they're facing, so they're being pushed by industry to do more, and yet they're not feeling supported with the vehicles that they need to be able to teach that current technology. You mentioned that in his shop, we've got 2004 vehicles, which obviously are not going to have current systems. It's almost 20 years old there. What do instructors need to do to be able to get through to their local industry partners or work at a national level in order to get the equipment that they need in their shops to produce the outcomes the industry needs?
So I'll chime in real quick here. At the high school level and at the college level, your program can become NATEF certified, and that's not the end-all solution, but it's a great start to get some support from various manufacturers with tooling and vehicles and stuff donated to the program. A lot of these vehicles will come with, a lot of rules and stuff. Maybe it's a bought back lemon car that they're going to donate, and that car obviously can never be titled again. When it's used up its life in the program, you have to document that it's been destroyed and stuff. But that's one quick way to start to get some of the support. Some of the other things is just have a relationship with the various car manufacturers in your local area. Invite them to be members of your advisory board meetings. Have them, everybody talks about the technician shortage, so everybody would love to have, young qualified techs, even if they're not, so-called experts at what they're doing at the present state of time, but somebody that has a desire to work and has a desire to learn. That's something that you can start a mentoring program with the various dealerships. And the more face time you have with your industry partners, the better off it's going to be to get them to support what you want. And once they're on the advisory board, we were talking about quantity versus quality. I could speak an hour on that subject alone, but a lot of times it's the instructor battling the administration to get stuff, to get funds approved, to get the things that they need. I can tell you from personal experience, if you have industry professionals on your advisory board and you go to your administration and say, this is what my advisory board says we need, whether it's equipment or, training props. ATEC makes some great training props as well as Console Lab and a lot of other places, but they come with a hefty price tag. But if the industry professionals are actually saying this is what you need to be competent and competitive in this in this education of auto repair or collision repair or whatever it happens to be, they're a lot more receptive to find the funds to approve that.
Thanks for that, John. Of course, as a salesman, I love having somebody tell my audience that I've got good products. The funding, of course, is always an issue, and that's something that we help out with. Mike Logan, you've got an awfully expensive bleeding edge piece of equipment, a vehicle, a Nikola truck there in a K-12 school. What did Eric Rubio do that made you feel confident about making that investment over there at that school as a way of giving this audience an idea what they need to do to get a similar partnership going with anyone?
That's a bit of a tough one to answer there. If any of you have the time, or maybe Eric can put something together to have a look at what Duncan Polytechnical is doing to be, basically a leader to fully immerse their students in the industry. It's an amazing program. It's an amazing setup, and it's tough to say otherwise. I mean, that's really it. They've really done a great job of putting together a program. Eric has done an outstanding job as a mentor, as an instructor or teacher, and leading his students through a full course to success.
Okay, so the trust begins with the instructor. It sounds like that it's not enough to just get them into an advisory board meeting, but you need to, as an instructor, impress your local partners with your own commitment to your program, your own ability technically. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
Fully, yeah, I would totally agree with that. I mean, the instructor is the key figure in that role.
Even more than the students?
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, if you're going to invest in something, I mean, the students will come. I mean, you can't control exactly how well prepared the students are or what their ambitions are or anything, but you certainly can gauge an instructor and his involvement and his passion and that's certainly easier to do. Yeah.
Great, thanks. Anybody else want to chime in on that? I've got another question I'm bringing somebody up to the mic here for.
I want to throw one thing out real quick. One of the things we did at the workshop was we recognized that over the years, every time we have a workshop, we keep on piling on more and more and more and more and more bullets and boxes for these teachers to check. And the list has become quite insane, as most of you who are teachers would know. All of the things that you have to do to satisfy NATEF requirements. Of course, I can't fully disclose everything that we did at that workshop, but one of the things we looked at is all of these checklists and everything. And we tried to streamline the tasks for entry-level techs at high school, and then the post-secondary taking over the roles that they're trying to do at the high school level. They're trying to produce refinish technicians and welders at the high school level. Well, what they need is assemblers, disassemblers, and people who can prep cars. And then from there, they get their training in post-secondary, where it's a lot more refined, spend a lot more time with their crafts, and get them in line with what they need. But that NATEF checklist was almost like a runaway freight train, and it's overwhelming to a lot of instructors, and I think that put a lot of pressure on them, and we're doing what we can to alleviate that. So there's work in progress, and that will probably hit the road here in the next year or two.
And to put a bow on what was discussed, build relationships with your local dealers. If you're after something from the OE, it is very challenging from an OE perspective. I lived that life for 20 years. It's very difficult to provide support to secondary and post-secondary facilities. It's just hard. It's hard due to legality and a number of things. But if you build a relationship with your local dealer, the dealer has a different set of rules, if you will. They understand your needs, right? You go to them and say, hey, I'm building technicians. I need your help. You need technicians. I can help you with that. And they will help you. And they can be your liaison to the OEM. Gents in the OE level, if your situation is different, please correct me. But that's the way it had been.
You get your local insurance companies involved too. They're having a lot of problem getting cars fixed, and they're recognizing a need, and they'd be more than happy and willing and able to get you cars from stolen recoveries, flood cars, cars that are actually total lost that could present some issues there as well. So
Great, thank you for that. I've got Tom here from the Department of Transportation here for Colorado with a question.
It's kind of a multi-phase. First of all, thank you all for being here. Really appreciate you guys taking your time. So I work for the Colorado Department of Transportation, and we do workforce development grants, and we just awarded a bunch of money to some high schools and colleges to do electric vehicle education. So I know that several of you OEMs have donated vehicles to high schools. My questions are a couple tiered. First of all, I really don't need to know how you choose those high schools, but once you choose those, is there any way we could look at the curriculum you deliver to those schools when you provide them a car? Because we'd like to know where the gaps are between what you're teaching them and what we need to help them finance or buy to make that a successful program. I was at a high school in Denver that just got a new Tesla, and we want to help them make that program successful. And so we want to help them fill the gaps in their curriculum to meet their needs and what you provide. And also, when you provide those cars to those high schools, community colleges, or wherever, do you go in and do any kind of training on the facility upfits? And then last of all, do you give them a list or supply them with tools, protective equipment gear that they need? So that's like 3-level question there. Sorry. Thank you. Sorry I didn't put that in the questions. No takers?
Bueller. So one of the threads in that question that stuck out to me was the question about access to curriculum and data. I know right now with the EV market being so competitive, a lot of that information is kind of proprietary and difficult for some people to access. What limitations are there, and how can that be lifted? How can we get more curriculum and/or just service data available?
Yeah, I'd like to chime in from Tesla. Out there on the internet, Tesla offers, we kind of have a free subscription service to all of our repair manuals, a lot of the wiring diagrams for all the vehicles and everything. So all you got to do is sign up for it. It's free, so a lot of free documentation out there. I'm in charge of our first responder page, which is tesla.com/first responders, with tons of documents about all of our vehicles and stuff. So yes, there is tons of information out there. And actually on that first responder page, there's the email address, firstspondersafety@tesla.com. All those emails come to me. So if you want to shoot me an email, I can easily send you that link that's out there. So you can get so you can sign up for a subscription for the service manuals and lots of the wiring diagrams and such like that. So all that stuff, there's free subscriptions out there for that documentation that we provide out there. And that's, luckily because of the big push of, people want to be able to work on their cars and such. So so we make that information available out there. So please feel free to reach out and I'll help you out. Not a problem.
Thanks, Mike. And I can act as a liaison since I have everybody's contact information here if you want to reach out to me.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
I want to leave that open for anybody else to respond to, but just so everybody's aware, we do have a roving mic now in the room. Sorry we didn't have that earlier. I should have made arrangements for that. But we got about 15 more minutes here. Just raise your hand if you got a question while they continue to answer that last question.
Hey, I'd like to add something from a conversation from earlier, if I may. STEM. In the high school environments, STEM. Yeah, let's tap into that. Build that alliance with the science teacher. Build that alliance with the math teacher, and even the English teachers as well. Because there's so much in your classes that you're teaching as automotive instructor that applies to all these other groups that are within the school. So make it a whole school effort. And that's a great way to tap into a lot of funding out there for STEM programs. Because once you align with the science and you're saying, hey, this is the science that we're actually teaching in class. When I was teaching at the community college, we're trying to build a math class for automotive students. And that was something that I taught as part of my curriculum because, some of the regular math classes were not something that the regular automotive students want to take. But, when you start getting into, your Ohm's law calculations, your voltage drop calculations, cubic inches, figuring out all these different systems and stuff, math gets exciting. So tap into STEM. There's lots of government programs out there to tap into a lot of money. And you may have to modify your program a little bit, but hey, if you know what you're doing, you can make it work. So there's lots of additional opportunities out there.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
I know Anthony Williams is probably looking down, smiling on that comment because that was a huge passion project for him to try and get that integration between automotive and STEM. And I can attest to that as a valuable approach. We've got a lot of our automotive training aids are actually being sold into STEM programs where there is no automotive program at that high school in a lot of cases. So that is a good way of kind of double teaming your administration and your funding opportunities to be able to get access to that equipment. Any other? We got one.
Yeah, let me chime in, Mike. What you just said is golden because now I'm reflecting back to high school. My mother forced me to take algebra. I fought it because I didn't think I'd ever need it. But did I know at the time that I would be able to figure out what cylinder volume was and how I could correlate that to mass error input? Helps me with diagnosing a vehicle today. But that was 40 years ago. But yeah, getting them more interconnected and so these students understand what the practical applications are is just absolutely golden. And then I'll tie on to what you said about Tesla. Yeah, I'm trying to pay attention to all the Tesla stuff that's going on. And I don't know what your perspective is on things, but also Tesla just released theory of operation. If you have a subscription to the toolbox, which you pay for, but it is golden. I mean, I have spent a ton of time in there, and it's basically the training. But going back to the question from the gentleman from Colorado asking about, vehicles are donated. And yeah, I have to wonder what's the end game, or what's the initial goal of donating a car when you don't have a training program that accompanies that vehicle. I think that's the pain point that he was after. And I think maybe the vehicles being donated, one, as a point of focus, right? Or, hey, here's some new technology. You can kind of check the car out a little bit. And if you want to learn more, it's so deep that you may need to go to the manufacturer-specific training to get the proper curriculum. So anyhow, thanks for letting me chime in again. Thanks.
Of course. Thank you, Scott. I got another question from the audience.
My name is Rory McLaren, and I'm going to...
Oop, we just lost his mic.
I'm going to ask a political question, if you don't mind. I don't think there's anybody in here that would be incensed if they took a loved one to the hospital and the loved one some difficulties, and you found out that either the nurse or the doctor was not competent, or let's say not qualified to do the job. I'm in a similar situation with my Ford F-350. And what I mean by that is it had a low engine power problem leaving Colorado a couple of months ago. And it's a 2015 Power Stroke with 50,000 miles on it. And I took it to the local Ford dealership, and they haggled around with it for a month. On 4 occasions I went to pick it up, and it broke down outside the dealership on each occasion. They finally told me that because I didn't use it enough, the turbines, the fins in the turbines had seized because it's variable turbo, and so therefore it needed a new turbo. Well, I lost faith in them, so I went and picked it up, and I took it to another Ford dealership. And I told them what the situation was, and they said, okay, after about 2 weeks, they said it needs a new turbo. So I gave them permission to put a new turbo in as long as it was an original Ford turbo. Another month went by, and they called me up and said, we hate to make this call to you, but we blew the new turbocharger while we were test driving the vehicle. When I went up to the dealership, I told them to pull the turbo, and I wanted to see it, because I understand turbochargers. And it had clearly not received any oil. I had a Ford document in my hand that told them that in 2015 there was an upgrade on the turbo installation. The young man who put the turbo in had no training. He wasn't officially a mechanic. The mechanics who worked on it at the original Ford dealership also had served in the lube bay and had worked their way up into the mechanical arena. So they have killed my Ford. Just like I gave you that analogy of killing the patient or hurting the patient because of lack of qualifications. So they've got a complete turbo failure into my engine. There's nothing left of it. There's aluminum everywhere. As you can imagine, no lubrication. So here's my question, if you don't mind. In my country, I wasn't, and this is my new country, so please, this goes back a long way. This is my new country, which I'm very proud of. But in my country, you were not allowed to enter the trades or work on a vehicle unless you were Red Seal certified. It was against the law, just like a nurse or a doctor in our country. My question is, when is this? What incentive do I have as a young person in America to go to school with you very competent instructors when I can get into the trade or get into a garage and earn the same money with no training at all, no formal training? What's the incentive?
Thank you for that, Rory. Just real quick, Rory is the mastermind behind the Fluid Power Training Institute. He's going to have a session after lunch on hydraulics, on hydrostatic transmission training. So be sure to attend that if you're a heavy vehicle guy. He's obviously got his finger on the pulse of a really big issue that we definitely don't have time to go too deep into, but it is one of those critical things that also ties into being able to get the funding and the other, the quantity over quality with your students kind of a question and your graduates. But I'll go ahead and see if anybody wants to jump in on that. We've got another question over here, Ed.
The dealerships don't have all the people they need, and they're putting people in those roles that shouldn't be. So you're the victim, in my eyes, of the technician shortage, if you want to boil it down that far. But certainly, they shouldn't have been working on it, but I think you can tie a lot of it to that.
Okay, thank you. Anybody on the panel want to jump in? We got somebody else who will, we got Tom from the Department of Transportation again after that.
I would like to just speak to one of those two questions, I guess. I can't speak to where are the protections for you as a consumer taking your vehicle to somebody to get it fixed. I mean, that's a tough one for where we are today, but I think it really calls upon us as instructors or instructor community in general, instill in our students a part of, learning never ends, that mastering your craft never stops. And I think I've been, professionally employed for 32 years as a technician. And what I've encountered more often than not are technicians who are just comfortable where they're at. They don't want to go to school. They don't want to, stay up on new technology. They don't want to do anything out of their own pocket, for heaven's sakes, to become better at what they do, which I think really speaks to their, lack of passion. And it calls upon all of us to really try to foster in these, especially these young minds, these students that, when you graduate high school or when you get that job as a technician, you're not done learning. You're not done becoming a master. You're going to spend the rest of your life becoming a master if you want to be anybody worth anything. That's about all I have to say of that.
Yeah, great point, Mike. And I think a word to key on there is passion. Many technicians, especially ones that are career techs that have been in the field for a while, begin to view knowledge as a penalty. And that may come as a shocker, but for those of you that have worked for a living, it's true. The more you learn, the more difficult jobs you're given. The more difficult jobs you're given, the longer you spend trying to diagnose, and fix, and that doesn't pay as much as something that's easy. So those that are passionate will go the extra mile. They will flourish and succeed. But there are a good number of shops out there that will hire anyone with a tool set because there is a technician shortage, and that's just kind of the way it goes. It's an unfortunate situation that someone had to practice on your Ford, and it happened twice. But your avenue there, sir, is the Better Business Bureau, by the way.
Okay, so Better Business Bureau certifications. You mentioned Red Seal, obviously, and ASE. I know there are other certifications on the market right now. Is there any move to have those become mandatory, either at the dealership level or at the state level, political level? Should it be?
Yeah.
Caught the question correctly. It's about certification, right?
Yeah.
ASE is our answer for national certification. Some shops buy into that and some don't. Some OEs buy into it and some don't. But ASE is ultimately the answer in the United States for certification and licensure, if you will.
Yeah, if I could chime in, to speak to the question about what incentive is it where's the incentive for somebody to do all this achievement and to be then competing against folks that are not right? I see that all the time. In my business here, we see consumers that have gone to shop and spent a lot of money and just not getting effective repairs. And it's sad to see it. This is a really big picture thing. And unfortunately, we've lived through it, right? If anybody's been in the business and doing refrigeration work, right? Back in the late, 80s or 90 or so, you had to get this refrigeration certificate so that you could buy refrigerant, right? And then the regulators then stepped in and said, oh, this is going to have a negative impact to those that are financially challenged. So we're going to give them the right to buy this refrigerant in containers less than 2 pounds. And that has basically caused a huge problem, because now these refrigerant cans, of course, have stopped leaking them. And I've had a $4,000 machine, go south because of that kind of stuff. And so be careful for what you wish for, because you'll get unintended consequences. But these vehicles are so complex, and just looking out at the horizon, I'm seeing more and more talk about software-defined vehicle diagnostics. This is a new, if you go look it up, SOVD. These cars are going to get smarter, and they're going to help us to mitigate some of these things. But in the meantime, this is a huge problem. And all we can do at this point is educate our clients one at a time to tell them the difference, because most consumers think that everybody's certified. And, they're getting the same level of service. It's like going to the hospital, like that was brought up before. And that is so far away from reality. It's really saddening. But anyhow, I like to get up in the morning and think that I'm doing the best that I can for my industry. And that's what drives me. So thanks for letting me chime in again. I'm just expressing my thoughts. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Scott. I think, I apologize, Tom, it looks like we're at time there. If you got a quick comment, we could jump ahead.
I do have a real quick comment. These guys said some really important comments. The really trouble is, I know a lot of you guys out here, and the products that you deliver to the industry are phenomenal. The kids you work with, the education but the problem is, these guys that own these little shops, they want to fill that bay, they want to get that flat rate hour out there, they want to make a living, and they take those shortcuts. Like one gentleman said, anybody with a rolling toolbox can go in there and work, and to me that's sad. But on the other side, working for the government, I've been in a lot of meetings with a lot of the governor, the senators, and everything they're talking about is, do you guys want more regulation, like the gentleman said? They look at Germany for a lot of their standards, and they talk about regulating this, regulating that. Every regulation puts a burden on you guys, puts a cost on you guys, and it's tough. It's really tough. The really sad part is all the technicians are not coming to you to learn the basic theory, to know exactly how they're doing. Any shade tree guy can go in there and change a part, turn a bolt, but what you guys are delivering is being missed, and now that we're going to electric vehicles, it can't be missed. So it's a burden on people like me that go into these high schools and say, you have to do the steps correctly. It's a burden on all of us. As we walk around, talk to people, you have to share that. There's no shortcuts on becoming a real mechanic. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Tom. That's it. That's all the time, unfortunately, we have for today. I want to be respectful of our panelists' time since they've been so generous to get on with us. If I could get a round of applause real quick for them.